You're listening to Hello Moxie with Nicole Donnelly. In each episode, we honor the unbreakable thread that connects the fierce women who came before us to modern-day pioneers carving their own paths. We'll share stories of unforgettable heroines, celebrate their courage, and bring to light the lasting impact they've had across generations. Get inspired by the stories of those who embody true Moxie and pave the way for others to follow. Hello Moxie is sponsored by DMG Digital, a woman-owned marketing consultancy dedicated to helping B2B companies and e-commerce brands create exceptional customer experiences.
Welcome to Hello Moxie. In today's episode, I am joined by the manufacturing maven, Meaghan Ziemba. Meaghan is a passionate advocate for women in the manufacturing industry and the founder and host of Mavens of Manufacturing. As the owner of Z Inc. Solutions, she offers expert copywriting and technical writing services. With a strong background in marketing, technical writing, and community management, Meaghan is committed to empowering others and promoting innovation and diversity within the manufacturing sector. She is also an avid CrossFitter and runner, and I am just so delighted to have her on the show today. Welcome to the show, Meaghan. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Nicole. I don't know if I'm an avid runner. I'm like trying to get back into it. But it's been a struggle for sure, but I'm trying to get there.
That's awesome. So that's my first question for you. What three things are lighting you up today? What are you just loving right now?
Yeah, so I will always say my three kids. So Annie, Annabelle, Declan, and Ronan. They just keep me going and are they drive me absolutely nuts sometimes, but like every day is they're my reasons why to keep going every day. But yeah, I do love CrossFit and I do love working out, and I'm trying to get back into running. So I was at like 10 miles within like an hour and 15 minutes. But then I just stopped. Yeah, I stopped running and now it's not that anymore. So I'm trying to like get back to that point. It's very relaxing when you get to that point. It can be really relaxing. So
yeah, I bet you get that endorphin high.
Yeah.
So I just started weight training for the first time, like real weight training, not just like, okay, I'm just going to randomly lift, 10-pound dumbbells. I actually went to a coach and said, hey, I want to do this proper. How do you really do this? And I've been doing it now. I started exactly a year ago and I love it. I love it. And I know that you can lift a lot of weight, Meaghan. I would love to know, what is it you love so much about CrossFit? What is it about it that just gets you excited?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I started probably around 7 or 8 years ago. And the place that I go to, the people there are just fantastic. And it's different every day. So it's not the same consistent workout all the time. And the thing is like, I go super early in the morning. So I wake up at like 3:30 and there's a small group of us that go at 4 o'clock in the morning. And it's some of the older people that go because we just have, I guess, I don't know. I don't want to say we have nothing better to do, but I'm very introverted. So I don't like being around a lot of people. But the group that I go with, they're very encouraging, and it doesn't matter like how much you're lifting or if you're RXing the workout or anything. It's just that they're there. We're there to support one another in our health journey. So it really doesn't matter if you're first or if you're last. Like everyone is encouraging one another and cheering each other on. And I just really like that about that gym. So you have your traditional gyms where you go and you kind of lift independently, and it's just those types of environments are really boring to me sometimes. And I just really like how every day at CrossFit it's a different workout. It's high intensity, it's cardio, it's a little bit of everything. And again, it's just the people. So I'm not lifting as much as I used to before I had my two boys. So I was like deadlifting over 300 pounds before I had my two boys. And
oh my God.
Yeah, I was, my back squat. My back squat was at 185, and I think my front squat was at like 165. So I'm not quite there right now. Like, and I lost a ton of weight when I went through my divorce. So like it was just really hard for me to lift that heavy. But I'm getting back to the weight I was when pre Declan and Ronan. I think I was at 145. I'm at 130 right now. So I'm getting back to that weight to lift where I was lifting. So I'm super excited about, and I'm like 41. So I don't know if I'll ever like get back to the point I was when I was in my early 30s. So, but I'm still going. I'm still enjoying it, and my goals are a little bit different than what they were in my early 30s. So I'm not trying to go too heavy. I'm just trying to stay in shape and be energetic because my two boys are highly energetic and I want to keep up with them. So, but it's just, yeah, it's just a lot of fun. So if anybody's interested in CrossFit, definitely look into it.
300 pounds deadlifting. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
I'm not there yet.
Yeah, but you did.
Yeah, the last time
Yeah.
I maxed out was like a couple weeks ago, and I think it was at 225. So
That's so cool. And here I am like proud with my like, oh my gosh, I can do 110.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
I mean, but I think what's cool about what you said is how much you love the community aspect of it, and that everyone's kind of on their own journey and you support each other in whatever journey that they're on.
Yeah.
There's not like a competition. It's more like you're there to support them, help them get their own PR, their own personal records, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is just so cool. And it's so true to who I see you, who you are just in general in life, how you show up. You're just such a champion and so great at cultivating community. So that's super cool. My gosh.
It's a lot of fun. I remember going to a competition and there was one girl, it was her very first competition, and she was the last person to finish the workout. And there was a time cap to the workout. And everybody that finished before her just gathered around her and kept cheering her on so she wouldn't give up. And she like barely made the time cap. And when she finished that workout, the whole place was just roaring for her and like so proud of her. And she like had a little bit of tears in her eyes. So it's like, that's like what it's all about. It's like supporting people on their health journey and not being judgmental of like where they're at. Cause you go on you go on some of the social media channels and you see people who are just starting their workout journey, and the comments can be really, really cruel. And it's just like, why are you going to be such a jerk when this person is obviously starting out and they're at least trying and they're struggling, and you're right away trying to set up limitations by being so critical to them. And it just bothers me so much that people are mean like that. But yeah, not at our gym. We have a really good group of people and it's a lot of fun. And we do extra activities outside of the gym too. So like the owner is a huge skydiving fanatic, and like every once in a while he'll set up like skydiving events for us to go and try. And I missed the last one because I had my kids, but yeah, the next one I'm hoping to go on because I love skydiving. It's fun.
I've never been skydiving. I gotta say, that's one thing I don't know if I could ever do. Tell me, why do I need to go skydiving, Meaghan? Why should I do it?
Why
should our listeners do it?
It's really fun, and it's like you're diving into an open painting. And if you're afraid, like I'm deathly afraid of heights. I don't like heights at all, but it's just really calming, and it just kind of puts your life in perspective. Like you can't really control anything that happens. You have to put your complete trust in the person you're jumping with and their equipment. And yeah, it's a really beautiful experience if you can get over that fear. And like, I'm afraid of heights for like probably a weird reason. So when I'm up high, I always have something in the back of my mind that's like, oh, what if you just jump? Like, just jump. Like, it's really weird. And it's not like because I hate my life or anything. It's just like, oh, how would this feel if you were to just jump? With skydiving, you can actually jump because you're going to get caught by the parachute. And it's just really like, I don't know, you're falling at the same rate of gravity. So you don't, or the same speed of gravity. So you don't get that drop feeling in your stomach. So it literally feels like you're floating before the chute opens. So it's just a really like cool, magical experience. I liked it a lot.
So cool. I love how you said it's like diving into an open painting.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I
that's
like my first experience was cool because I was one of the last groups to jump. So we had a sunset and it was
oh, how
literally
lovely.
just like jumping and then watching the sunset. It was awesome. And skydivers, like the ones that are certified and trained and do it all the time on their own, they are like a different breed of individuals. Like their view on life is really interesting and they like have fun and
Yeah,
just
what
enjoy
is
it.
their view? What do you notice that's different about them? How do they view life
I
differently?
think they just appreciate every single moment to the fullest because you're literally like you're gambling with your life. I think when you're a skydiver, if you're someone who's in like high adrenaline stuff, I think they just really enjoy every moment because you never know when something's not going to go right and that's going to be the last time you do something. So I think they really just love the high energy stuff and they love being outside obviously because you're jumping all the time outside and they love I think that feeling of freedom. So like when you're skydiving or if you're on like a motorcycle, there's just a different feel to it than doing something else. So I just yeah, and I talked to one of the people that my coach would go with all the time and he basically just travels from place to place taking like really odd jobs. Like he's a fixer upper type person, so he can fix anything. But he literally lives for skydiving, and he's like, I can't really have a relationship. He's like, I haven't really met anybody to like travel with me, and he's like, this isn't really the lifestyle to start a family, you know, because he's like, I just love traveling and going from place to place, and he is like, and I don't know how long I'm gonna like ever. He's like, I don't think I'm ever gonna get sick of this, so yeah, he just keeps going from place to place. He's like, it's really hard to like maintain a relationship because some women want to,
He needs to find another skydiver like him.
yeah,
He'll just travel with him and skydive.
yeah. So it was just really interesting to see all of it. And they're kind of just really laid back individuals. They're just, they don't really like drama or confrontation. So it was a lot of fun to hang out with them.
Yeah, it's interesting how you mentioned that they tend to be very like present and appreciate every moment. And I think that seems to be from, it's just like if you can really just get good at living in the moment and enjoy just like simple pleasures and being present, that's something I've always struggled with. I'm always in my head, Meaghan. Like I'm getting better, but I have
Yeah.
a tendency to live in my head a lot. And one of the things I've noticed is that when I actually like ground myself in whatever I'm the present moment, like with all of my senses, you know, what am I hearing, smelling, tasting, all of that,
Mm-hmm.
I find that I can like I have so much more joy than otherwise. And it sounds like they're really able to tap into that like sense of just joy of
Yeah.
just being in the moment. And even the way you described how it's like diving into an open painting and it puts life in perspective because you can't control everything. Like you're in the moment when you're skydiving in that way. And it really helps you, I think, experience life the way it's meant to be experienced, you know? So it's so
Yeah.
cool.
Well, we all get caught up in our like professional lives too. And it's like, oh, you go to work until you die. And I was like you. I still kind of am like in my head a lot of the times, but I'm practicing on, not getting upset over things that I can't control and like really
Mm.
focusing on things that um, are valuable to me in my life and really honing in on like my core values and what's important to me. And it's
Mm.
been extremely helpful, especially within this last year. It's been really,
Yeah.
really helpful. And I'm not as angry as I used to be. So I'm
Mm.
like learning how to just live in the moment and be appreciative because we don't know when our last second is going to be or when our next tomorrow isn't going to coming, like we don't know, so why get upset over
True.
things that you can't control?
So true. Yeah, and I mean, I think that just says a lot about you. I know you've gone through a really big transition over the last couple of years in your personal life.
Mm-hmm.
And I can only imagine. I mean, my parents divorced when I was a teenager, and I remember it was just such a, like, even to this day, it's like a, a really difficult period of my life, difficult to think about.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have like so much, I just think I have so much admiration for you with how you've been able to, I'm a working mom, and it's
Mm-hmm.
hard enough. Like, how do you do it, Meaghan? Like, you mentioned that you mentioned specifically about how you kind of got in touch with what your core values are. Like, what has been your journey to really understanding what your values are? And I'm asking you a lot of questions right now, but
Oh, you're okay.
what do you think about all of that?
Yeah, so it's, and I'm not trying to like convert anyone by any means, but there was a time where I just didn't believe in anything. And
Mm,
I think you have to have some sort of spirituality or faith in
mm,
something. And maybe you don't, I don't know. But for me, I needed to get reconnected with my faith and
mm,
reconnect with the people that really support me on my journey. So, like,
mm,
I was connecting with some of the wrong people and getting distracted by what they were doing. And yeah, so I needed to connect with the people that support my journey and who I am as an individual. I needed to connect with people that weren't trying to change me or convince me to be something that I'm
mm,
not. And then I just needed to start praying again every single day, and that's what I started doing. So I really focused on just
mm,
putting positive vibes out there, because it took me a while to understand that, like, the more positive you are, that energy gets returned to you, and it's been a
mhm.
huge help. And yeah, I also had to learn how to forgive people that hurt me, which is really hard to do. But once
Really
I was
hard.
able to let go of that anger towards people that wronged me and hurt me and just wish them the best, even though
Mm.
maybe deep down I don't want the best to happen for them, just wishing them the best and like letting it go really freed up some of my energy to put towards the things that matter to me. So it's not perfect by any means. I still struggle from time to time, but it's less than what I was going through at the beginning of some of the things that I went through. So yeah, I mean, I'm not telling people to like believe in God or anything, but like that's my faith. I do believe in a God, and I do believe
Mm,
praying has helped me out. But I feel like if people can find some way to either meditate or journal or
mm,
pray or just, put good vibes out there, the easier their life is going to be. And when they can let go of things that they don't have control over and let go of some of this anger that we see all the time, if they can let go of
mm.
that and just start thinking about, okay, how can I help the people around me and the community I'm involved in, I think it's a lot easier to just follow your path and where you're supposed to go.
I love that. I also love to pray too. So I think that's so cool that that's something that's been really important to me. And I think it's you make a good point about when you have the kind of a spiritual practice, it's so humbling. It humbles you so much because you realize it's not just about you, right? The world is much bigger and there's more people in it that need help, and you can learn to trust, this higher source. And it's just so it can be a very humbling experience. And I find that when I'm humbled in that way, it helps me learn and grow more,
Yeah.
because I'm much more aware of what my weaknesses are. And I can go to God and be like, look, I'm really struggling with this. I need help. How can I get over this challenge that I'm having? And learning to like lean on someone higher to help me through that has really helped me overcome some really difficult things too in
Yeah.
the past. So
Well, and
yeah,
it's
that's
hard
what's
with
been good
like
for me.
social media, because I think social media
Mm.
is turning everyone into a little bit of a narcissist, like, not to offend anyone, but
Yeah.
like there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people out there that are, oh, look at me, I, and not
Mm-hmm.
really thinking about how they can use their skill set to help others around them. Um, and I think, like, if we can look outside of ourselves and understand that, like, okay, yeah, this is a really hard moment for me, but there's someone else out there in the world who might have it harder than I do. So what can I
Yeah.
do to really lift them up and make their lives a little easier? And I think when we can start looking at, you know, instead of just one individual, but all individuals and what we can add to make society better, it just becomes a little bit easier to like handle some of those tougher moments. And I know that I'll probably get criticized for that, and then people will probably get mad at me, but I don't know. I can't worry about who I offend anymore with what's important to me. And like, it's just really hard sometimes to have these conversations because I know some people get mad about them, which is really interesting to me because it's like, I'm not trying to force my beliefs on anyone. I just want people to really like think outside of themselves and like what they can do to help others instead of like, okay, what can I do to just help myself? And some people don't want to do that, and that's okay. We don't have to hang out then. Kind of thing.
You mentioned something about you started to recognize that there were some people in your life that maybe they weren't a good fit for you.
Mm-hmm.
How did you come to recognize that? What was it that maybe changed, right? Because they were in your life, and then you realize, hey, this isn't. What was it that? How were you able to identify that? Hey, this isn't the direction I want to go. These aren't the people that I want to be with.
It was really hard because initially I didn't recognize it. I'm a very trusting person, and I wear my emotions on my sleeve, and and I'm a vulnerable person. And I just don't like conflict because I try to avoid it. But I've had a lot of good people in my life saying, no, this person's not doing anything right by you. Like they're trying to take advantage of you. So it was kind of through their guidance and their direction that I've been able to like catch red flags sooner than later. So yeah, I just look for patterns with behavior and patterns with like consistency and whether or not they're communicating with me because they actually want to collaborate with me, or if they're just communicating with me when it's beneficial to them. So like I had to kind of like filter through that. But initially it wasn't me catching it at all. It was like my close tribe that was like, you might want to like watch out for this because it doesn't seem like they have your best interest in mind. And it's unfortunate, it's sad, but I mean, it's just the way life is. And, you know, I don't wish any harm or any bad towards those individuals. It's just that we weren't compatible and they had a different idea of what was right for them versus what I had right for me. So then we just needed to go our separate ways.
Yeah, it's like you knew what your value system was, and you had people that you could trust that could help you make that, you know, and I think that's really important. I think as women, a lot of times we struggle to trust our own intuition, our own voices, I think. And I think it gets, you know, our intuition can kind of get lost, and being able to really learn to trust that.
Mine was definitely lost, and I realized that I was ignoring my intuition more than listening to it. So now I'm like not ignoring it. So as soon as I feel something is off, I'm just like, I'm gonna go pivot this way. So I'm more in tune with my intuition for sure these days, and it's been really helpful because now I'm just not even ignoring it and letting things. And the other thing is too is like I used to give out second chances a lot. And now I'm just like, no, I'm not doing that anymore. And it kind of upsets people, but it's just to keep my boundaries secure and keep my happiness secure. So it's nothing against the other people. It's just that I know where I want to go now, and I know what I need to do, and I have my kids that I need to keep as a priority. So anything outside of that, I just have to let go. So
yeah. And boundary setting can be really hard. I've struggled with that. I've struggled with boundaries.
Yeah.
And I've been learning like, hey, Nicole, sometimes it's okay to say no. But I think when you mentioned something really important is it's so important to stay true to what your value system is. Really get in touch with that. Really start to like, you know, listen to your body. I think it's amazing what our body knows, Meaghan. Like our body knows what's good for us. Our body knows what's not good for us. And if we would just listen to what our body's telling us rather than our head or our heart, it's amazing. Like when I've actually really focused on tuning in on that, like what is my body telling me about this situation? If your heart is like, for me, if my heart is racing, right, and I'm like in this fight or flight mode when I'm with a certain person, I'm like, that's a red flag. I
Yeah.
need to, I need to listen to that. I need to hone into that. And what is that telling me? Right. And so I think that what you said there is like really getting clear on your, what's your value system? What is your intuition telling you? Trusting the good people in your life that have got your back is really.
Yeah. And I mean, I even did one-on-one coaching with someone who specializes in that. So like, they were able to like help me kind of recognize some of those signals, and
Yeah.
just you got to learn how to tell people no. And they actually said there's a polite way to tell people to F off when you need to. And I was like, I really like that piece of advice. And she's like, because she noticed that I'm kind of like edgy. And she's like, you don't want to lose your edginess, but at the same time, you don't want to come across as like too aggressive or assertive, because in your professional life, you still want to maintain that respect with people. So she's like, there is a polite way to tell people to like F off. And I'm like, I kind of like that. I think I'm going to stick with that. So yeah, it's been a really fun journey.
And I think too, it's okay that you're like saying no feels uncomfortable. It does. It just does. I mean, at least at first when you're starting to do it more, maybe as I get better at it, Meaghan, it'll feel more comfortable. But I find like as I'm starting to set more boundaries for myself, like it feels really uncomfortable afterwards, because you don't want to, I don't like to hurt people or, want to upset them in any way. But have you found that has that gotten easier for you? Like saying no sometimes?
It has gotten easier because the thing is like, you have to start thinking outside of like, okay, because it is hard to get out of your head. And like, I'm a worrier, so I like think the worst most of the time, but I'm getting better at that. And the other thing is like, okay, well, if this wasn't something that aligned with their values, would they say no to me? So like, when you think of it that way, I mean, I've had people say no to me and reject me, and I know for a fact they didn't lose any sleep over it. So it's like, okay, so why am I gonna lose sleep over this? Like, me saying no to them doesn't necessarily mean that everybody is saying no to them. Like, they'll find whoever's compatible to collaborate with them. So I had to like let go of that guilt, because it's just, there's a lot of people in the world. There's a lot of work in the world. There's a lot of opportunities in the world. So it's, and when you focus on the things that really provide value to you, and, you get paid more, to be honest. Like, and I learned this from a book. It's called Badass Your Brand. The woman that wrote it, she mentioned, she's like, when you start really focusing on the projects that mean something to you and feed into your passion about what you really love doing, she's like, you're going to start attracting more high value customers that are going to pay you what you're worth. So you gotta start aligning your values with the work that you do, because otherwise you're going to keep running into the projects that aren't going to pay you as much, and the clients aren't going to respect you as much or feed into what really like feeds your soul.
Lights you up.
Lights you up. So saying no is not a bad thing. It's a really good thing to keep you in tune with what lights you up and keeps you passionate, and like, because there's good stress and there's bad stress. So I always want the good stress of my life. I want those projects that really feed into what's valuable to me, but also what's valuable to the customers I'm working with. And so I don't feel guilty as much anymore.
So it gets better.
It gets
what you're
better.
telling me. That's good.
It definitely does.
Good. Well, I would love to hear, Meaghan, about a woman in history that you really admire. I started this show because I find that we don't hear a lot about these stories of women from history. And when I remember when I was 11 and I had a project, I did a project on Harriet Tubman, and it just lit me up. I was just so excited to learn about her, and just she just had so much moxie to do what she did, right? And I would just love to learn about these women and what they've accomplished, because I think there's such a cool thread that we can connect to them and then carry that forward into the next generation and show some gratitude for the sacrifices they made. So I'd love to hear, like, who is it that really has inspired you? Tell me about her.
Yeah. So you sent some of these questions ahead of time. And when I saw this one, it was really hard for me to pick just one woman because there is a ton of women in our history that have like done a lot of great things. And I know like with my brand, Mavens of Manufacturing, like I pulled inspiration from Rosie the Riveter, but like I didn't want to just be the obvious with that one. So I really did some research, and there was one woman that came up that I've heard about her before. I didn't know too much of her backstory, but I knew that she was like the first woman to run the Boston Marathon. And I never knew that like no woman was ever included in that marathon, but her name is Kathrine Switzer. And it was April 19th of 1967. She signed up under her initials and her last name. So she didn't use her full name. She just used her initials and her last name. And there wasn't really anything in the rules or the playbook where it specifically said that women weren't allowed to run. So she wasn't really breaking any rules, but women just never ran in the Boston Marathon. So she was wearing bib 261. And it was like within the first 4 miles, whoever the guy was that was like in charge of the race tried to pull her out. And tried to pull her out because they noticed that he noticed that she was a girl. So tried to pull her out, and she was running with her boyfriend at the time. I think they eventually got married, but then eventually got divorced. But he like had to like block this guy from pulling her out of the race. So she was the very first woman to complete that. And after that, she decided to like be a huge advocate for women entering marathons and stuff. And I think something for the Olympics too. So she like, she was like an advocate to get marathons in the Olympic event as an Olympic event. So she really stepped up and was the voice for women. And I just thought that was really interesting because like, why does it matter if women want to do certain sports? And I think it's like moments like those that really open up doors for women to do things that and it's like the same with Rosie the Riveter, right? Like a lot of women weren't doing manufacturing or engineering jobs. Like they were expected to like stay at home and work. And then when World War II happened and this movement happened with women entering manufacturing, it really like gave women confidence to pursue things they normally wouldn't pursue or thought they couldn't pursue. So I think Kathrine Switzer did the same thing for some sports. She opened that door for other women. Women were able to see her and be like, oh, I'm going to try this out now. And I think that's just really important because if you don't see yourself in something, it's really hard to like tell yourself, okay, this is where I belong. And this is something I want to try out. So I really like those trendsetters, those pioneers, the people that are like, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm just going to do what I want to do. I really like, I don't want to call them troublemakers because I think that's probably a negative word to say. But I like the people that challenge the status quo. I really like that. And I like underdogs a lot too.
Yeah.
So I'm always root for underdogs.
Yeah, I see you embodying that. Like you totally have challenged the status quo with Mavens, which is super cool. What I loved about what you shared, what was interesting to me is that there was no rules against her joining the race.
None.
There was nothing, but it was the social expectations that maybe kept other women from doing it. And it just made me think like, oh my gosh, think about how many fields like manufacturing or like tech or, so many things in our culture, in our society that as women, we just self-select ourselves out of it, not necessarily because we're not allowed to be there, but just because of the societal expectations that that's not where we belong or, there's nobody else who's done it before. And it makes me kind of think about like, what other areas in our society are we holding or are women holding back from stepping up and stepping forward and stepping out more? Yeah. And I think what you're doing with Mavens is a great example of really trying to encourage diversity in manufacturing, a place that's been predominantly male.
Yeah,
So
and I mean,
it's
a
cool.
lot of I've gotten some pushback about that because there are some individuals who are like, we don't care what you
Mm,
look like or how you
yeah.
identify as long as you just get the job done. And I'm like, okay, that's all well and good that you're saying that, but if you look at the statistics and the data, it's been a certain way for a really long time for a reason. And why is that? Like, engineering and manufacturing is like the pivotal place to ask the question why. And so, like,
So true.
why are we not asking why
Yeah.
more? Like, why are there not, so many, like, why aren't there more Black people? Why aren't there more
Mhm.
Asian people? Why aren't there more? Like, it's just, and I'm not trying to
I
offend
love that.
anyone or speak out of
Mhm.
place, but it's just like we need that diversity to really drive innovation because we all come from different experiences. And if we're not
Mhm.
sharing those experiences, like I could probably figure out a solution to a problem in a different way than somebody else just because of like the path that I took to get where I'm at today. And it's not to like make anybody feel guilty or feel uncomfortable. It's just like, hey, let's bring in another outside perspective because they're going to see things differently than how we're seeing them because we spent
Mhm.
every day looking at the same problem for the last so many hours. We need a fresh perspective. And I kind of apply it to my writing ability. Like, I'm not an engineer or manufacturer by trade by any means. I'm a writer, I'm trained in technical
Mhm.
writing. So, some of the questions that I ask are about the most basic things. But because engineers of a certain caliber are working with things every single day, sometimes they forget about those basic things and they don't
Mhm.
understand that someone like myself who isn't in engineering and manufacturing might not understand the basic level of technology. So don't forget to include that in some of your documentation because it's not always going to be the most elite person working with
Mhm.
your technology. It's going to be someone who's just starting in the field in the sector, so they have to know the basics. So it's good to
Mhm.
have that outside fresh perspective because then you can look at different ways to put something together. So again, it's not to like make anybody mad or feel guilty or whatever. It's just like, okay, so let's start bringing in new people. We have this skills gap, we have a workforce issue. How can we fix
Mhm.
that? Well, let's bring in more people. Well, we can't just focus on just the guys. We can't just focus on all the white people. Like we gotta we gotta bring in more people. And yeah, so it's just ridiculous to me personally that there's a lot of people that get really upset when these conversations come up, and I'm just like, it's not to like make you feel bad.
It's to make everything
Yeah,
better. It's to improve. I mean, it's how innovation happens is from that diversity, you
right,
know?
right. And I'm not
I
just talking about like gender and ethnicity either. I'm talking about
Yeah.
neurodiverse individuals. I'm talking about. So I just got diagnosed with ADHD, which was really interesting to me.
Mm.
But I know
Mhm.
some people who are in manufacturing that have Down syndrome. I know some people who have autism. There's some people who have PTSD. There's veterans out there. There's second chance citizens, people who committed a crime and went to jail for a while. Like,
Mhm.
there's so many different types of people out there who have been through experiences who might not have thought this was a place for them because they don't see themselves in it. But yeah, if you give them a chance, they might have the next greatest idea to something we've been trying to solve for the longest time. So why not include them in the
Mhm.
conversation? It just I don't know, just doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm really trying to like not just women but everybody to really get more confident and to trying things out, and if it doesn't work, okay, try something else out. Like, I don't
I
know.
love it. I love what you said there about why are we not asking why more?
Right.
Why are we not asking why more? That is such a brilliant like challenge. Like it makes me think like I don't think I ask why enough, you know? I think that's such a cool way to approach the problems that we're facing is how can we ask why about some of the status quo situations that we're encountering. And I I totally can understand what you're saying too about diversity. I think a lot of times, like I just spoke at a tech conference, okay, and I felt like a unicorn because I am not a tech, like I'm not a developer. That's not my background at all. I'm a marketer. And I remember feeling like a unicorn speaking at this conference. And I was like, what do I have to share that's going to be like, there was definitely some strong self-doubt that like, okay, they're just, what I have to say is just going to be, it's not going to be important. But what I realized is that I needed to share it because nobody else was talking about it, and it was like a unique perspective about like what the challenges are specifically with the change management process that people just kind of don't really, they haven't, there's been a gap there in terms of how people are addressing some of like the people side of moving people through the digital transformation. And there's a lot of assumptions made, like to your question about why are we not asking why more? A lot of times with these digital transformation projects, the partners make a lot of assumptions. They assume that maybe the client is at this point, but really they don't understand and they need more training or understanding about how this certain aspect of e-commerce, for example, works. And so to your point, like, why are we not asking why more? Like that's kind of like a really important challenge for all of us is like, question your assumptions. What is it that you're assuming about a situation or a problem or, a problem that you might be facing at work? What are you assuming about that problem that you need to question and ask?
Yeah.
Well, what's a different way I could be looking at this?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool. Man, Meaghan. So good. So, okay. So I would love to know, like, when you think of the word Moxie, what does that word mean to you? And can you share an experience of a time where you felt like you just really embodied that?
Yeah. So for me, this is like such an interesting question because before I was just like, when I heard the word Moxie, I was thinking of that. And it's not called Moxie, it's Noxema that I found. I thought it was like the soap. I was like, why are we talking about facial soap? What is this about? So that was where my mind was when I was like,
Noxema. I gotta look this up. Your face belongs to Noxema. That's from like the 90s.
I don't know why that was
my gosh, Rebecca Gayheart. I remember her. That is
Wasn't
hilarious.
She gorgeous? God, I wanted to be her so bad in the 90s. I just wanted to be that woman for whatever reason. I thought she was like the epitome of natural beauty because of that damn commercial. I don't know. I think for me, Moxie personally means like being resilient and not letting failure like take over and just being high spirited and resilient and not giving up. So that's what I think it means to me. I've been through a lot of stuff, like a lot of trauma that I suppressed, but I'm still here and I'm very proud. Like, I don't consider myself a victim of any of it. Like, I feel like I'm a survivor. And I think when you switch those terms from victim to survivor, you have more strength as a survivor than you do a victim. Like, you're not going to let anything change who you are.
You're taking ownership.
You're taking ownership of it.
You're taking accountability and saying, I'm going to choose to learn from this and heal from this.
Yeah.
And break the cycle.
Right. And, I mean, I think with Mavens, I really needed to like have that because, that was such a difficult journey for me because, I started it during COVID and then, I had 2 little ones. And then I had my daughter going through high school and like she was going through her own stuff. So I was like trying to balance being a new mom and like a mom of a teenager, going through COVID, having a partner who was dealing with their own things because they were a combat veteran. And like my marriage didn't end up working out. And like there was a period of time where I was like, well, maybe if I didn't do Mavens, maybe that could have worked out kind of thing. So like there was a lot of like high and lows when I first started Mavens. And I definitely needed to like remind myself, no, this is a good thing. And it's still a good thing. And I'm just very grateful for the tribe that I have of women, especially. So like during COVID, I really got connected with a lot of women in the industry who are doing amazing things. And we started these chat groups, and we've met each other at trade shows, and we like became really, really good friends. And because we're all going through this whole like, okay, we're leaders in this space. We know we're leaders in this space. We know we have a voice. We've been able to like really support one another and build our confidence up in one another, which has been really, really helpful, and like mentor one another. And there's been a couple of times where I was like, I need to stop doing this because I'm kind of like this is my own personal thoughts. I'm not saying this was actuality, but like my own personal thoughts was like, I need to stop doing this because I'm neglecting my children. I'm not a good mom. Like I wasn't a good wife. Like I lost my marriage. Like all these negative thoughts were becoming really overwhelming. And there was a couple times where I'm like, I need to stop this. So I would like reach out to this group, and they're like, you're crazy. You're not quitting this. Like we need this. We need you. You were the start of us like getting confidence in ourselves. Like you have to remember of the younger generation that you're inspiring and building up confidence in. And they were just kind of like that pep talk that I needed. So yeah, I think when you're going through hard times, you can't think that you're alone because there's other people that like are going through the same thing. So I feel like you definitely need to like build a tribe. But I like every time I'm having a hard day, I go back to these two little girls. They're the hashtag junior board of directors, and they watch my podcast. They watch Automation Ladies podcast. They watch a couple other manufacturing podcasts, and they're so excited about this sector. Like they're really excited about it. And I just got a package from them. So they needed to do like a fundraiser for school. So they did like this whole business plan, and they created these hats, and they designed their own logo, and like they did their own promotion, and they had their dad help push it out on LinkedIn, and they actually sold out of hats. And it's like
So cool.
they're seeing us on social media like be successful, and that like inspired them to try something out and be successful. So now like every time I'm having a hard day, I'm just like, okay, what would Peyton and Aiden do? Like what would they do in this situation? And like how would they feel if like I gave up and just walked away? Like that would be horrible for them. Like they would feel bad about it, and like what's going on. So like, and it's the same thing with my kids. Like I want my kids to see me struggle, not because, oh, she's struggling, so like we need to struggle. I want them to see me struggling, but also get through those struggles so that they know that it's not so bad that I can't come out on top for it. So I think Moxie has a lot to do with that type of attitude where you're just, and that goes back to CrossFit, right? Like CrossFit can be brutal sometimes. Like some of the workouts, you just have to like get in your head and be like, you can finish this, and you can get through this, and you can keep going. And I think you need that type of moxie to get through some of the stuff that you go through that kind of overlaps in your professional and personal life.
I really love what you shared about how you're thinking about you're thinking about the other people around you.
Yeah.
And that is how it helps you kind of like have the courage to step up more and to do the more challenging things, is because you're recognizing that you're part of a much bigger movement, if you will, and that your voice in that movement is important because other people are looking to you as an example, as a role model. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is that humility of recognizing it's not about you, it's about the people that you're serving.
Yeah.
And that they need you to use your strengths so that they can rise up too. And even your kids, you know, I think sometimes as women, I feel like we walk a tightrope. And I'm like, how can we turn this tightrope into a platform, right? Like, it's like, I heard you say like, oh my gosh, I was worried I was a bad mom. How many women out there are always worried like, oh my gosh, I'm a bad mom because I'm doing this, or I'm working so many hours. But what if we flip the script on that? Like you're doing something that you're passionate about, that you love. That's a great mom because your kids are able to see you really leaning into something that that drives you, that's helping the world, that I want my kids to be able to see me doing things like
Yeah.
that are really helping and making an impact,
Mm-hmm.
instead of worrying about like, oh, I'm not being a good enough mom. I'm not spending every waking hour,
Right.
with them. I don't know. Like, how could we get away from this like tightrope mentality and just embrace all? I don't know. I don't have the answer.
I
I
don't
just
know
think
if
it's
I
just a
like
constant
have
struggle.
the answer for that, because like if
Yeah.
you look at our culture and our society, and it's not just here, like it's in other places too, the responsibility of the home has been primarily on the woman.
Yeah.
Like it has been.
Mhm.
And you can look through our history books and how our society is run for hundreds of years. And even still today, there's pushback on
Mm.
working women. And like we are the, and I'm not saying it's like that for everyone, because I do see some men stepping up to be stay-at-home dads, which is, kind
Mhm.
of looked down upon to some other men, which is weird to me. Like if a
Yeah.
married couple decides like what the responsibilities are and how they're supporting one another, that's on them. That's not no one else's business. And I know,
Mhm.
like with my former, there was a lot of he was given a lot of flack because he changed his last name to mine. And
Oh, interesting.
yeah, there was a lot of like
That's cool.
comments made that really put tension on our relationship when we were together. And it was like, why does it
Mm.
matter? Like, it's no one's
Yeah.
business what we decide to do. But it's
Mhm.
because I had my daughter, she has my last name. So I wasn't going to
Mhm.
change my last name. I was going to keep it to
Yeah.
stay connected to her. And he didn't want separation when we were together. So he just said it would be easier for me to change my last name. And then it is what it is. So, I mean, we had our reasons to do it. And I think with every situation, so like with my parents, my mom had six of us. She decided to be a stay at home mom. And I respect stay
Mhm.
at home moms. I wish I could
Yeah.
be a stay at home mom sometimes, but it just wasn't in the cards for me. And you're seeing that more and more. And, with all of the way that things are priced and interest rates and all that,
Mhm.
you really can't have a stay at home parent if you belong to a certain economic tier. Like both parents have to
Yeah.
work, unfortunately. So I feel like it's really no one's business. But how do we step away from that? I have no idea. Like that's a great
Mm.
question. I know a lot of women like myself. Like I like working. I like doing both. And one of the reasons why I became a freelancer is because I had this idea that it would give me more time with my children. And it is definitely a balancing act. And that's one of the reasons why I'm getting better at saying no, because I do have the ability to pick my own hours and decide what days I want to work. And then I can spend more time with my kids. So you
Mhm.
definitely have to have a strategy and figure out, okay, what's the amount I need to make? Like, what kind of lifestyle do I want? Do I want to travel all the time? Do I want a lot of materialistic things? Because if so, then I need to make this much money. And I don't think, as at the beginning, like we were taught that as women. Like we weren't taught how to negotiate or talk about finances.
Or ask for what we want or create what we
Yeah,
want, right?
we
Like what
weren't.
you just said is you have basically created and cultivated a lifestyle because were very clear on the kind of life that you wanted. You wanted to have the flexibility to be home with your kids. And so that was your goal. But you also love to work, right? And so you've created a life for yourself that allows you to do those things because you said, why not? Why not? Why not? And I think the more women step out and start to realize, like, I can create my own life if I can get very clear on my values, like you mentioned earlier, very clear on your values, very clear on what it is that's important to you and what you need, and acknowledge that it's okay to have needs and wants. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
And say, I'm going to create this life for myself.
But they also need to learn how to like negotiate and balance their finances. And like
Mm-hmm.
I was taught that at a very young age, because my mom does have like an accounting background. Like she's really good with numbers, and she always told me like treat yourself as a bill and pay yourself first, and then put it in a savings account and try not to touch that.
Mm.
And she's like, so every time you get paid, put a certain percentage towards yourself, pay off all the bills that you need, and then whatever's left over, that's kind of like your fun money. And but it's the same with women in businesses that are trying to move up the ladder, especially in male dominated industries. How do you do that? Like, and that was a question for a really long time. And if you look at some of the data that's out there, only 1 in 4 leaders in manufacturing and engineering is a woman. I'm starting to see it change a little bit, hopefully. But what's really fascinating is there are a lot of organizations now that are providing like business training and educational opportunities and programs where women can go and find mentors and learn how to have these types of conversations so that they can set themselves up for success. Where 5-10 years ago, you barely heard of those options. Like, they weren't around, and you really had to be proactive and advocate for yourself if you really wanted to do that. And, 5-10 years ago, women were really nasty to one another because, we were very competitive with one another because we thought there was only one chair at the table to be that top woman in the space. And now you're not seeing that competitive as much. I think it still exists because I've run into a couple women who weren't really nice to me, but there's a big shift happening where women are being more supportive of one another and they're collaborating more with each other, which I think is really refreshing. But yeah, we need those resources. We need to learn how to ask for more money or raises. We need to be advocates for ourselves. We need male mentors and women mentors. Like, we need both. And if we really want to uplift manufacturing here in the United States, we need all of the hands on deck as possible. And we can't really do that if we're not collaborating with one another and having conversations with one another. So there's like this new term that I started hearing a couple years ago called cooperation, where you're collaborating with your competition as well as competing with them. So it's kind of bringing that like fun competitiveness back. But if you recognize that you can't help someone because you just don't have the capabilities to do it, but the person down the street from you does have it, then you refer them to that customer. So it's an interesting time to be in engineering.
I love that. I think it's a great tip for women to just not be afraid to ask, especially when it comes to salary.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just a huge proponent. If you're applying for a job and you get the offer, always ask for more. Always ask for more.
Negotiate.
All they can do is say no. And if anything, I feel like they'll respect your moxie for saying, no, like, I deserve, I deserve more. So,
and the other thing I like telling people is, like, if someone says no to you, don't get so discouraged about it. Like, don't take it personal. Cause I used to do that all the time. Like, I was just like, oh, I'm not good enough. And that's why they said no to me. But now I switched it to, they said no to me because this isn't what's meant for me. There's something else out there that I'm supposed to pursue, and it's going to help me flourish more. And it's something that I'm trying to teach my daughter now. So like recently my daughter, she wasn't fired. She was working at this place and she got a call and she got really nervous and she's like, I don't know what it's about. And I'm like, well, they might be letting you go. And she just kind of looked at me and started crying. And I'm like, it's not a big deal. Like, it's okay if you get let go from somewhere. And she's like, but I didn't do anything wrong. Well, per their policy, they kind of had to like restart some things. So they didn't like fire her. They just said, here's what we have to do. And here's why. You can reapply next year over the summer. So it was just targeted towards the college workers. So they had to have something set in place where like they let them all go, but they have a chance to reapply. So they even let her keep like some of her uniform because they were like, we want you to come back. So and she was upset about it because she's like, Mom, I'm trying to pay for college. And I said, okay, but let's look at this. I said, you are stressed out right now because of all of your exams in the class that you're taking over the summer. You have all these labs to do. You have all these exams to do. You are stressed out. Let's tell ourselves this happened because I need to focus on this so I can bring my grade up and actually pass this class. Let's think of it that way. And she's like, Oh my God. So now she has more time to put towards her studies and like
Mm-hmm.
breathe a little bit and sleep a little more because she wasn't sleeping at all and it was causing
Mm,
stress. So I was like, this happened for a reason, and this is the reason why. She was able to raise her grade up, and hopefully she will pass this class
mm,
because she really needs it for the program that she's in. So you got to start thinking more of like, okay, this
yeah.
happened because I'm not supposed to be going that direction. I'm supposed to be going in this direction. And
Yeah.
there's a book called
No isn't
Brave.
rejection, it's redirection.
Yes,
No
I
isn't,
love that.
it's just redirection,
But there's
you
a
know?
book called
Mm,
Brave that I read too, and it's I can't remember the author's name, but I'll have to send it to you. But she is from India, and she was in the
okay.
financial space, and she's really good at her job, but it wasn't a calling. And her
Yeah.
culture, a lot of her family members are mediums, and
Oh,
she
interesting.
just felt like that's what
Huh.
her purpose was. Like she needed to be a spiritual guide and a medium. And she's like, but nowadays people think that's like crazy. So this book is about her journey of getting on the path of her true purpose. And that was one of the things that,
Cool.
like, I went and heard her talk. So there was an event and it was in Chicago and I got lost underground and my GPS was all like messed up. And I was like bawling in the car and I was like,
Oh
oh my
no.
gosh, like I was about to like just give up and head home. So I was like, I said, this is what I said to myself in the car as I'm crying, like, God, if I'm supposed to be at this event, please get me there like now. And this parking lot that I drove by like 10 times, I didn't see the first 10 times, all of a sudden was there. And I was like,
Oh,
where the
what a
hell
gift.
did that come from? So
Mhm.
I pull in the parking lot.
Mm,
It was like 2 minute walk down the building that I need to be in. And as I'm
mhm,
walking in, they just started the event. And I'm like,
mhm,
this is crazy. I didn't know who this woman was. I never spoke to her before. But during her keynote, she talked about like how things happen and how there's signs and you need to follow your intuition and all this stuff. And I just started crying during her talk because I'm like, this literally just happened
mm.
to me on my way here. And like, yeah, things align to the way they are supposed to be. So, as you said, no isn't a rejection, it's just redirection. And when you can start
Yeah.
thinking that mindset, it makes things so much more easier to accept. And it really helps
I
you
agree.
focus on the things that matter so that you can get to your point of direction faster. So my daughter was just
Mm,
like, I can't believe like you were right about this. And I'm like, sometimes it happens. Your
yeah.
mom isn't wrong all the time.
She, as she gets older, she's going to come around more, I think.
Yeah,
But yeah, I
absolutely.
also think it teaches us patience, which is such an important.
Yeah.
I struggle with patience, but whenever you go through these redirections, right, or these pivots, maybe that are outside of your control,
Yeah.
it's just you learn patience, and I think patience is with how fast our world is today and
Yeah.
how things are moving so quickly. It's so much harder for us to just wait and enjoy the learning and the
Hmm.
growth and the strength, frankly,
Hmm.
that comes from just being patient. I mean, it's a real. I think patience is such a gift. So, like, something I struggle with. But yeah, like that's how I mean, if everything we wanted just came to us, when we asked for it, like
Life would be really boring.
it would be really boring. Yes,
It'd be very
absolutely.
boring.
It's true. The twists and turns make life interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Oh, Megan, this has been such a fun conversation. Can we just talk all day?
Yeah, I
Just chat.
I love having these types of conversations because you don't
Yeah.
I mean you do hear about them sometimes, but I think they're important, and I think kind of just taking a step back and asking yourself why, like, why am I getting upset with this, or why is this certain thing
Mm,
happening to me today? When you can start like resetting yourself and focusing on what really matters to you, I think life just gets a little bit more enjoyable and a lot easier to handle. So whatever I can do to help people with that, well. all for it.
That's a great way to end our episode. My gosh. Because my final question is, what would you like to pass on to future women? And you just said it.
Yeah.
You literally just said it, is to make sure that when you're feeling upset, to really explore that. Ask why.
Yeah.
Ask the why of like what's going on there. And I think that's such great advice.
I think too, I would just like women to also give themselves more grace. I think we're really hard on ourselves a lot of the time. And this word imposter syndrome keeps coming up. And I would really like to just get rid of that word. I saw this speech for a college event. I can't remember the woman's name, but she was just like, she talked about this moment in history when bicycles were created, and they came up with the term called bike face, and it was targeted towards women. And the reason why they came up with it and targeted it towards women is because they were trying to prevent women from getting bicycles to ride around. And it was just an interesting conversation. So she's like, apply that to the term imposter syndrome. She's like, yes, there are some men who claim to have felt imposter syndrome. She's like, but when you look at it as a whole, it's mostly women who are like imposter syndrome. And she's like, why is that? And she's like, so it puts things in perspective.
It's like a stigmatizing thing.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. I'll have to find that speech for you and send it to you. It's a really
I
good
would love to see
commencement speech that was at a college graduation. And she's just like, just ride that bike, try something new, take risks. And she's like, if you fail, just fall with grace and get back up again. That's all you got to do. Yeah. So it was really inspiring. So I'll send that to you so you can share it with everyone.
I would love that. And what's so funny about that is I'm actually writing a new speech about imposter syndrome, Meaghan. So that is hilarious.
I'll send it to you.
I would love to see that. Send it to me. I would love it. It would be, because I've been struggling with it a little bit. I'm like, where do I go with this? So that would be fantastic.
Okay, I'll send it to you. It's such a good speech. I loved it. I was just like, oh my gosh, that's so interesting. Like, who would have thought?
When Kathrine Switzer was told no woman can run the Boston Marathon by her own college coach, she responded with 2 words. Why not? Because no dame ever ran the Boston Marathon, he said. The distance is too long for fragile women. But then he added, but if any woman could do it, you could. This was the start of Kathrine's journey at 20 years old to becoming the first woman to complete the Boston Marathon. Now it seems so normal, no one would even think twice. But not then. 4 miles into the race, she was physically assaulted by the race director, who attempted to rip her bib off and move her to the sideline, telling her she couldn't race. After her boyfriend tackled him, Kathrine kept on, shaken. But this wasn't the only resistance she faced during the race. Her own boyfriend, Tom, remember the one who had just tackled the race director? He told her, once he caught up to her at mile 6, that she was too slow and that she had ruined his chance to go to the Olympics by choosing to run in the race and causing him to hit the race director. So not once, but twice, she was told, no, you don't belong. No, you're not good enough. No, you can't do it. Once by a stranger, and again by someone she loved and trusted. At this point, she reports feeling ashamed and crying during the race. Her boyfriend had convinced her that she was just a girl, a jogger, who had bumbled the Olympic dream out of his life. Even still, she kept running. She told her coach, Arnie, I'm going to finish this race on my hands and my knees if I have to, because I knew if I didn't, that other women would not believe a woman could do it. And when the press asked her during the race what she was trying to prove, she said, I have nothing to prove. I just want to run. Kathrine would go on to finish the race. And 5 years later, yes, 5 years, women were officially permitted to run in the Boston Marathon. Kathrine says, When I go to the Boston Marathon now, I have wet shoulders. Women fall onto my arms crying. They're weeping for joy because running has changed their lives. They feel they can do anything. So, my question for you is, when have you experienced resistance? And what is the bigger why you can hold on to propel you forward? And is there an unspoken rule or social norm in your life that you are curious about questioning? What is it? What if you said, why not, like Kathrine? What if you went for it? That's a wrap for today's episode of Hello Moxie. I hope you felt that unbreakable thread connecting you to the women of the past, to the trailblazing pioneers of today. Their stories of audacity, resilience, and courage are a powerful reminder of what's possible for you when you choose to live with Moxie.